I'm Elara, 28, female, and my own mother called me a jealous liability to justify not inviting me to my sister's engagement party. The accusation was the final, perfectly sharpened blade in a lifetime of small cuts. It was the moment I realized that the role they had written for me, the difficult, overly sensitive, and envious older sister, was one I would no longer play. My family expected a scene. What they got instead was my silence, my absence, and a locked door to the most important day of my life. My family operates on a simple, unspoken system. My younger sister, Maya, is the sun, and the rest of us are minor planets who are supposed to happily orbit her. My mother, Carol, is the architect of this solar system. To her, Maya, a bubbly and attractive social media influencer, is a reflection of all her own best qualities, amplified and perfected. I, on the other hand, am a historical archivist. I find comfort in the quiet, dusty truths of the past. My mother finds my profession as baffling as she finds my personality. Who wants to live in the past, Elara? She'd often say, a slight curl to her lip, as if my love for history was a personal failing. This dynamic, this stark favoritism, wasn't a sudden development. It was the wallpaper of my childhood, the background noise of my entire life. I have cataloged these moments in my mind the way I catalog historical documents, each one a piece of evidence supporting a painful thesis. One of the earliest exhibits is my 10th birthday. I had asked for one thing, a horse riding lesson. I was obsessed with horses, a love fueled by library books and daydreams. My parents had a bit of money, and the local stable offered a cheap introductory package. For weeks, I talked about nothing else. My mother would smile vaguely and say, "We'll see, sweetie." On my birthday, I woke up with my stomach fizzing with excitement. When I came downstairs, the living room was filled with pink and silver balloons. In the center of the room, on a brand new doll stand, was the most elaborate, expensive dollhouse I had ever seen. It was a miniature Victorian mansion, complete with tiny porcelain figures and velvet furniture. It was a beautiful gift, a spectacular gift, but it wasn't the gift I had asked for. Standing beside it was 8-year-old Maya, her eyes wide with wonder. "Oh, Mommy, it's for me," she whispered, though it was my birthday. My mother laughed, a tinkling sound that always seemed reserved for Maya. "No, silly, it's for Elara, but you can play with it too, of course." I remember the hollow feeling in my chest. I looked at the dollhouse, and all I could see was what it wasn't. It wasn't a dusty stable, it wasn't the warm scent of hay, it wasn't the feeling of a powerful animal beneath me. I tried to be grateful. "Thank you," I said, my voice small. "It's big." Later that day, I overheard my mother on the phone with my Aunt Patricia. "She barely even looked at it," Carol said, her voice laced with theatrical disappointment. "Honestly, I don't get that child. Maya would have been over the moon. Elara just has this morose streak. I bought her the most incredible gift and she just sulked." She never once mentioned the writing lessons. The narrative was set. I was ungrateful. Maya was the joyful child who would have appreciated it properly. The dollhouse, of course, became Maya's de facto toy. I never once played with it. A second, more glaring example came when I graduated from university. I was the first in our immediate family to get a master's degree. My thesis on medieval manuscript preservation had been awarded a departmental prize. It was a niche field, I knew, but I was intensely proud. My graduation ceremony was on a Saturday. My parents came, and my mother spent most of the time complaining about the hard wooden seats and the length of the speeches. The very next day, our family group chat exploded with notifications. Maya, who was in her second year of a business marketing program, had just been featured in a local fashion blog for her campus style. It was a 2-paragraph feature with a few glossy photos of her posing near a fountain. My mother, Carol, was ecstatic. She forwarded the link to every relative we had. She called me, her voice buzzing with an energy I hadn't heard the day before. "Did you see? Isn't she just a star?" Carol gushed. "That photographer said she has real potential. She just has this natural charisma, you know. It just shines out of her." "That's great for her, Mom," I said, trying to keep the flatness out of my voice. "It's a nice article." "Nice, Elara, it's fantastic," This could be a real launching pad for her. She paused and then added, as if suddenly remembering, "Oh, your thing yesterday was nice too, honey. We were very proud." Her thing, my master's degree, the culmination of 7 years of higher education and hard work, was my thing. Maya's 5 minutes of local blog fame was a launching pad. The message was clear: my achievements were quiet, academic, and therefore less valuable. Maya's were flashy, public, and worthy of celebration. My accomplishments were footnotes, hers were headlines. This pattern repeated itself endlessly. When I got my first serious job at the city archives, my mother's reaction was lukewarm. "Well, as long as you're happy, dear," she'd said, as if happiness were a strange and unlikely outcome for a job that involved cardigans and climate-controlled vaults. When Maya landed a paid internship at a marketing firm, my mother threw a celebratory dinner. It's not that Maya was malicious. She wasn't. She was simply the product of her environment, a girl who had never known anything but adoration. She floated through life on a cloud of praise, genuinely believing she was the center of the universe because she had always been the center of her family's. She didn't have to be cruel. The system did the work for her. My fiancé, Ben, saw it from the very beginning. Ben is an architect, a man who understands structures and foundations. He saw the cracks in my family's foundation on our third date. I'd been telling him a story about my mom forgetting my birthday but flying to another city for Maya's half-birthday, and he'd stopped me, his expression serious. "That's not normal, Elara," he said gently. "That's not just forgetfulness, that's a choice." He was the first person to ever validate my feelings without telling me I was being too sensitive or dramatic. He saw the evidence for what it was. Over the years, he became my rock, the person who would listen as I recounted the latest incident of casual favoritism, and just nod, his presence a silent affirmation that I wasn't crazy. So when Ben proposed to me 6 months ago, it was the happiest moment of my life. We were on a trip to the coast, standing on a cliff overlooking the sea, and he got down on one knee. It was simple, private, and perfect. When we told my family, the reaction was predictably Maya-centric. "Oh, wonderful," my mother had chirped. "Maya will be the most beautiful maid of honor. We have to start thinking about dresses. And this means Maya's engagement will be next, I'm sure of it." She said it all with a bright smile, completely oblivious to the fact that she had made my engagement announcement about my sister. 2 months later, Maya's boyfriend proposed. It was an extravagant affair involving a hot air balloon and a professional photographer, all of which was immediately blasted across Maya's social media. And just like that, the family's focus shifted entirely. My upcoming wedding became an afterthought. All energy, all conversation, all excitement was funneled into Maya's engagement. It was happening all over again, but on a much grander scale. I thought I had braced myself for it. I thought I was prepared. I was wrong. The discovery happened on a Saturday night. Ben and I were having a quiet evening in, curled up on the sofa with a movie we'd both seen a dozen times. My phone, which I'd left on the kitchen counter, buzzed intermittently. I ignored it, content in our little bubble of peace. It was Ben who, on a trip to the kitchen for a drink, picked it up and said, "Hey, your cousin tagged you in a photo on Instagram." "Probably just another meme," I murmured, my eyes still on the screen. "No," he said, his voice strange. "It's a party, it looks like a big one." A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I muted the movie and took the phone from him. There it was, a picture posted by my cousin Sarah. The photo was a wide shot of my parents' backyard, which had been transformed. White fairy lights were strung between the trees, elegant cocktail tables were draped in white linen, and a massive "Congratulations Maya and Tom" banner hung over the patio. The yard was filled with people. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, family friends, everyone. They were laughing, holding champagne flutes, celebrating. In the center of the crowd were my mother, Carol, beaming with pride, and my sister, Maya, looking radiant in a white dress, her hand placed strategically on her fiancé's chest to show off her new diamond ring. I swiped. The next photo was a close-up of Maya and my mother, their heads closed together, sharing a secret smile. Swipe. A photo of my father giving a toast. Swipe. All my cousins laughing together. Everyone. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. The air left my lungs in a painful rush. It felt like I'd been physically punched in the chest. Ben sat down beside me, his hand warm on my back. Elara, what is it? It's Maya's engagement party, I whispered, the words feeling foreign and sharp in my mouth. It's happening right now. I scrolled through the feed, a digital voyeur at my own family's celebration. Dozens of photos were popping up now, tagged with Maya and Tom get engaged. Each picture was a fresh stab. There was my Aunt Patricia, looking a little uncomfortable, I thought, but smiling for the camera. There were my uncles, who had always claimed to adore me. There was Mrs. Henderson from next door, who used to give me cookies after school. They were all there, participating in my erasure. They were celebrating a milestone in my sister's life while I sat a few miles away, completely clueless, deliberately excluded. The quiet peace of our evening was shattered, replaced by a ringing silence in my ears. I felt a cold, creeping numbness spread through me. It wasn't just that I wasn't invited. It was the secrecy, the collective agreement of my entire family to pretend this wasn't happening, to keep me in the dark. Not one person had thought to call me, to send a text, to ask why I wasn't there. They had all accepted my absence as part of the plan. They didn't tell you, Ben stated, his voice low and furious. They threw a party for your sister and didn't even tell you. They didn't want me there, I said, the realization landing with the force of a physical blow. The numbness began to recede, replaced by a deep, glacial anger. This wasn't a simple oversight. This wasn't a case of a lost invitation. This was a calculated, deliberate act of exclusion. I stood up, my hands shaking. I have to call her. Are you sure? Ben asked, standing with me. Right now, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do, I said, my voice shaking with a fury I hadn't felt in years. I have to. I walked out to our small balcony, the cool night air doing nothing to quell the fire in my veins. I found my mother's contact and pressed the call button, my thumb trembling. It rang twice before she answered, her voice loud and bright, muffled by party music in the background. Elara, hi sweetie, is everything okay? She asked, a master of feigned innocence. No, Mom, everything is not okay, I said, my voice tight. Why am I looking at pictures of Maya's engagement party on Instagram? There was a brief pause. I could hear her move, the background noise fading as she presumably stepped away from the crowd. When she spoke again, the fake cheerfulness was gone, replaced by an all-too-familiar tone of weary defensiveness. Oh, it was just a small, last-minute thing, Elara. We didn't want to make a big deal. A small thing, I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. It looks like half the state is in your backyard. Everyone is there, Mom, the entire family. Don't exaggerate, she snapped, her patience already wearing thin. We just invited a few people who are close to Maya. I'm her sister, the words tore out of me, raw and ragged. I'm your daughter, how am I not on that list? She sighed, a long, suffering sound I knew well. It was the sound that preceded a lecture, the sound that signaled I was being difficult. Elara, let's be honest. You know how you get. You've always been the jealous one. We didn't want you making a scene and ruining Maya's big night. The words hit me with the force of a physical slap. The jealous one, making a scene. It was the narrative they had crafted for me my entire life, now weaponized and used to justify this ultimate betrayal. All the times I had been sad, they had called it jealousy. All the times I had been hurt, they had called it drama. They had pushed me away and then blamed me for feeling the distance. A strange, chilling calm washed over me. The anger didn't vanish, but it solidified from a raging fire into a block of ice in my chest. This was it. This was the moment the final thread connecting me to their version of family snapped. A scene, I repeated, my voice suddenly devoid of emotion. You were worried I'd make a scene. Yes, she said, sensing a shift but misinterpreting it as submission. Maya has been under so much stress, and we just wanted one perfect night for her. You understand. It's better this way. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice as cold and clear as glass. You don't want a scene at Maya's party, that's fine. I took a breath, the decision forming, absolute and irrevocable. Then you won't mind missing my wedding too. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. I could picture her face, the defensive smirk wiped away, replaced by shock, then disbelief, then anger. What did you just say? She hissed. You heard me, I replied, the calmness in my voice unwavering. You and Maya are no longer invited to my wedding. I don't want anyone there who thinks I'm a liability. I don't want anyone there who would deliberately hurt me and then call it a favor. So, congratulations to Maya, I hope she had a perfect night. Goodbye, Mom. I didn't wait for a response. I ended the call and blocked her number. Then I blocked Maya's. I stood there on the balcony, the phone heavy in my hand, the distant city lights blurring through the tears that finally started to fall. I wasn't crying from sadness, not really. I was crying from the sheer, crushing weight of it all and the terrifying, liberating lightness of letting it go. The moment I disconnected the call, the adrenaline that had been holding me upright seemed to evaporate. My hands started to shake violently, and I leaned against the cool glass of the balcony door, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The finality of my own words echoed in my ears. Then you won't mind missing my wedding too. It wasn't a threat shouted in anger. It was a sentence handed down, a consequence delivered with the chilling certainty of a historical fact. Ben slid the balcony door open and stepped out, wrapping his strong arms around me from behind without a word. I leaned back into his chest, letting his warmth seep into my bones, and finally let out the sob I had been holding back. It was a raw, ugly sound, torn from a place of deep, old hurt. I did it, I whispered into the night air. I really did it. You told them, he said, his voice a low rumble against my back. What did she say? I recounted the conversation, my voice cracking as I repeated my mother's justification. She said I've always been the jealous one, that they didn't want me making a scene. The absurdity of it was breathtaking. They had orchestrated this entire, hurtful drama, and yet I was the one they feared would cause a scene. It was like an arsonist blaming the fire on a book of matches. Ben's arms tightened around me. That is the most twisted, manipulative thing I have ever heard, he said, his voice laced with a cold fury I rarely heard from him. They create the exact situation that would devastate any sane person, and then use your potential, completely justified reaction as the reason for their cruelty in the first place. It's perfect, circular logic. He was right. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy they had engineered. For years, they had poked and prodded at my insecurities, favoring Maya at every turn, and when my hurt inevitably showed, they pointed and said, "See, we told you she was sensitive. We told you she was jealous." They manufactured the evidence to support their claims. I uninvited them, Ben, I said, turning in his arms to face him, my eyes searching his. To our wedding. I told her she and Maya weren't welcome. He looked at me, his gaze unwavering. There was no judgment in his eyes, no hesitation. There was only fierce, unwavering support. Good, he said simply. It's our wedding, Elara, ours. It's supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. Why would we invite people who actively cause you pain? Why would we let them stand there and smile for pictures, pretending to be a happy family after doing this? His validation was like a balm on a raw wound. For so long, I had been conditioned to believe that my reactions were the problem, not the actions that caused them. I had been gaslit into thinking that wanting to be treated with basic decency and equality was a form of high-maintenance drama. Hearing Ben, my logical, kind, and steady Ben, confirm that my decision was not only justified but necessary, felt like I was finally standing on solid ground after years of walking on shifting sand. We went back inside and I curled up on the sofa, the forgotten movie still paused on the screen. The initial storm of emotion began to subside, leaving a landscape of weary sorrow in its wake. My phone started buzzing again. A new number. I ignored it. Then a text message from my father. Dad, Elara, your mother is very upset. You need to call her and apologize. You have misunderstood the situation. Misunderstood. Another classic term from their playbook. It implied that my perception of reality was flawed, that I was too emotional to grasp the true, and always innocent, nature of their intentions. I showed the text to Ben. He shook his head slowly. He's her enabler. He always has been. It's easier for him to smooth things over and ask you to absorb the blow than it is to confront your mother's behavior. I knew he was right. My father, a man who loved peace above all else, had always chosen the path of least resistance. And that path always involved me being the one to concede, to forgive, to forget. But I couldn't misunderstand a backyard full of my entire family celebrating without me. I couldn't misunderstand my mother's cruel words. "I'm not calling him," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not apologizing." I put my phone on silent and pushed it to the far end of the coffee table as if it were a venomous snake. "Okay," Ben said, pulling a soft blanket over me. "Then we don't. Tonight we just stop. No more calls, no more texts. Tonight is about you and me." And so we did. We ordered pizza, we drank wine, and we talked. We talked about our wedding, but this time, the conversation was different. It was lighter. We started to reimagine it, not as an event that had to accommodate my family's toxic dynamics, but as a true celebration of us. "We can do it anywhere," Ben said, his eyes lighting up. "We don't have to use that venue your mom was pushing. We could go to that beautiful old library downtown, the one you love, or the botanical gardens." A genuine smile touched my lips for the first time that evening. "The library?" I asked, a little thrill running through me. I had always dreamed of getting married there, surrounded by books and history, but my mother had dismissed the idea as dusty and dull. "Why not?" Ben said, taking my hand. "It's us, Elara, it's perfect for us. A new chapter beginning in a place full of old stories." The idea took root in my heart and began to grow. This wasn't just about uninviting my mother and sister anymore. It was about reclaiming my own life, my own joy. It was about building a new future on a foundation of truth and mutual respect, not on the cracked and crumbling foundation of my childhood. As the night wore on, the pain didn't disappear completely, but it changed its shape. It was no longer an all-consuming fire. It was becoming something else, fuel. It was the fuel I needed to finally build a boundary of steel around the life that Ben and I were creating together. For the first time, the thought of my wedding day didn't fill me with a sense of anxious obligation. It filled me with hope. It would be a day free of pretense, free of judgment, free of the heavy weight of their expectations. It would be a day for me, and that was a scene I would be more than happy to make. The days that followed the engagement party incident, as Ben and I started calling it, were strangely quiet. It was an unnerving, expectant silence, like the stillness in the air before a thunderstorm. I had blocked my mother's and sister's numbers, but that didn't stop the messages from seeping through the cracks. My father texted me every other day, his messages oscillating between pleading and demanding. "Dad, Elara, this has gone on long enough. Family is family. Dad, your mother is beside herself. You're breaking her heart. Dad, just talk to her, for me, please." I read each message and deleted it without replying. What could I possibly say? He didn't want to hear the truth. He wanted me to perform my usual role, the apologetic daughter who smoothed things over. He wanted me to absorb this injury, just as I had absorbed all the others. This time I refused. My mother, unable to reach me directly, began a campaign of passive aggression through other channels. She would post old family photos on her Facebook page, pictures of me and Maya as happy children, with sentimental captions like, "My two beautiful girls. My whole world. #sisterly love family first." It was a public performance of loving motherhood, a curated reality so divorced from my own that it felt like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Maya, for her part, was completely silent. I imagine in her world, this was just another one of Elara's dramatic episodes. She was the star of the show, after all. The supporting cast's offstage turmoil was likely of little interest to her as long as the spotlight remained firmly in her direction. During this period of tense silence, Ben and I threw ourselves into planning our reclaimed wedding. Our first act of liberation was canceling the generic hotel ballroom my mother had insisted upon and booking the George Peabody Library. The moment we stepped inside for the official tour, I knew it was the right decision. The atrium soared upwards, 6 tiers of ornate cast-iron balconies lined with hundreds of thousands of books, all culminating in a massive skylight that bathed the marble floor in a soft, ethereal glow. It was a cathedral of knowledge, a monument to the stories and truths that endure. It was everything my mother wasn't: quiet, profound, and breathtakingly real. "This is it," I whispered to Ben, squeezing his hand. "This is our place." We found a new sense of joy and partnership in the planning. We chose every detail together, from the deep burgundy and gold invitations to the menu that featured dishes from our favorite local restaurants. Every choice felt like an act of rebellion, a declaration of our own identity as a couple. There was no one to please but ourselves. The most difficult part was the guest list. As we wrote out the names, I felt a pang of sadness. I was effectively severing a part of my family tree, but who was really holding the axe? I wasn't the one who had made the first cut. One evening, as we were addressing invitations, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I had a sinking feeling I knew who it was. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a message popped up. It was my mother, having borrowed a friend's phone. "Elara, I know you're getting my messages," her voice began, syrupy and strained. "I just want to talk. I think we should meet for lunch, just us girls. We can talk about the wedding plans. I saw a dress that would be just perfect for Maya as maid of honor." I stared at the phone in disbelief. She was acting as if my ultimatum, my clear and painful declaration, had never happened. She wasn't offering an apology or acknowledging my age. She was trying to steamroll over it with wedding chatter, to pull me back into the old dynamic as if nothing had changed. She believed my boundaries were suggestions, not rules. She genuinely thought that if she ignored my decision, it would simply cease to exist. This was the moment my resolve hardened from firm to unbreakable. This wasn't just about the party anymore. It was about my mother's fundamental inability to see me as a separate person with valid feelings. To her, I was an extension of herself, a character in her play, and I was currently off script. The only family member I spoke to was my Aunt Patricia. I called her a week after the party, my stomach in knots. She was my mother's older sister, but she was a different breed entirely. A retired nurse, Patricia was practical, no nonsense, and possessed a quiet sense of fairness that our side of the family sorely lacked. "I saw the pictures, sweetie," she said before I could even get the words out. Her voice was gentle, without a hint of judgment. "I have to be honest, I felt very uncomfortable being there. When I asked your mother where you were, she just waved her hand and said you weren't feeling well. I knew it was a lie." Tears pricked my eyes. She told me she didn't invite me because she thought I'd be jealous and make a scene. Patricia let out a long, weary sigh. "Oh, Elara, that's her old song, isn't it? She's been singing that tune since you were a little girl. Anything you felt, if it wasn't sunshine and rainbows, was a scene." "I'm so sorry, honey. No child deserves that." We talked for over an hour. I told her everything: the phone call, my decision about the wedding, my father's texts, my mother's voicemail. I told her about the library and the joy Ben and I were finding in planning something that was truly our own. "Good for you," she said, her voice full of warmth. "You are building a life with a good man and you are protecting it. That is not something to be ashamed of. A wedding invitation is not a summons, Elara. It's a privilege. And if people don't treat you with love and respect, they have not earned that privilege." Her words were a lifeline. She saw me. She understood. "I'm still sending you an invitation, Aunt Patricia," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I would be honored if you would come." "Try and stop me," she said with a soft chuckle. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." A few weeks later, we mailed the invitations. Each one was a small work of art with a letter-pressed image of the library on the front. We put them in their burgundy envelopes, affixed the gold wax seals, and sent them on their way. One went to my father's address, addressed only to him. One went to my Aunt Patricia. One went to my cousins. None were addressed to Carol or Maya. Dropping them into the mailbox felt like a point of no return. The quiet was about to end. The storm was about to break. I just didn't know it would be my kind, gentle aunt who would send me the first report from the eye of the hurricane. 3 weeks. That's how long the silence lasted after the invitations were sent. It was a fragile, temporary peace. Ben and I were in the final stretch of wedding preparations, a whirlwind of vendor confirmations and last-minute decisions. The drama with my family had been pushed to a quiet corner of my mind. I knew it was still there, a sleeping dragon, but I was determined to focus on the impending joy. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, carefully documenting a collection of 19th-century letters, when my phone vibrated with a call from Aunt Patricia. I smiled, thinking she was probably calling to gush over the invitation she'd received last week. "Hi, Auntie," I answered, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder. "Elara," she said, and my smile faltered. Her voice was strained, heavy with a troubled energy. "Honey, I'm sorry to bother you at work, but something has just happened." "What is it?" I asked, my heart beginning to beat a little faster. "Are you okay?" I'm fine. It's your mother," she said, and I felt a familiar dread wash over me. "She's just left my house. She was a mess." I sat down heavily in my office chair. What did she want? "That's the thing," Patricia said, her voice a mixture of pity and frustration. "She came over for our weekly coffee, just like usual. We were sitting in the kitchen, and she was complaining about the caterer Maya wants for her wedding. And then she said, 'I just don't know when Elara is going to send her invitations. It's getting a bit late, don't you think?'" I closed my eyes, a fresh wave of hurt washing over me. After everything, my mother still believed an invitation was forthcoming. She hadn't been waiting in suspense, she'd been waiting with entitlement. Aunt Patricia continued, "I was floored, Elara. I didn't know what to say, I just stared at her. And I said, 'Carol, the invitations went out last week. I received mine on Friday, and then I showed it to her.'" The silence on my end of the line was absolute. I could picture the scene with perfect, painful clarity. My mother's confused face, my aunt's hesitant hand extending the beautiful burgundy envelope, the dawning horror in Carol's eyes as she recognized the elegant script and the gold wax seal. "She looked at it like it was a snake," Patricia said softly. "She picked it up, her hands trembling. She opened it and read it. Then she looked up at me and her face just crumpled. 'But where's mine?' she asked, her voice so small. 'Mine didn't come. And Maya's didn't come. There must be a mistake with the post office.'" My aunt sighed deeply. "I had to be the one to tell her, Elara. I said, 'Carol, I don't think it was a mistake.' And that's when she broke down. I'm talking hysterical. Crying, sobbing, the whole 9 yards. She kept saying, she wouldn't do this to me, she wouldn't do this to her own mother." My own breath hitched. I felt a confusing swirl of emotions, a grim satisfaction, a deep sadness, and a flicker of guilt that I quickly extinguished. This was not my fault. This was the inevitable result of her own actions. "What happened then?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "She was a wreck, not of remorse, Elara, that's what got me. She wasn't crying and saying, 'I was so cruel to her, I deserve this.' She was crying because of how this would look. She kept saying, 'What will people think? What will I tell the family? Everyone will know I'm not invited.' It was all about her own humiliation. That was it. That was the core of it. Her pain wasn't born of lost love, but of lost face. It wasn't about her relationship with me, it was about her reputation among her peers." "Right before she left," Patricia said, her voice dropping, "she saw the invitation sitting on my counter. She just stared at it. I asked her what was wrong, and she just shook her head and left without another word. A minute later, my phone pinged. She'd sent me a photo of it." "She sent you a photo of your own invitation?" I asked, confused. "No, honey," Patricia clarified gently. "She took a photo of my invitation and sent it to you, but I don't think she meant to. I think she meant to send it to your father or someone else to show them proof. I think she sent it to you by accident. Hold on, I'll forward it. A moment later, my phone buzzed with an incoming picture message from my aunt. I opened it. There it was, my beautiful wedding invitation, lying on Aunt Patricia's granite countertop. It was a slightly blurry, hastily taken photo, but it captured the elegant script of our names, the date, and the location, the George Peabody Library. Beneath the photo was a single, gut-wrenching line of text, clearly from my mother, clearly not meant for me. It read, "She really did it. She's humiliating me." I stared at the image and the text, and the last vestiges of my hope for my mother's redemption crumbled into dust. It was never about me. It was never about our relationship. It was about her image, her pride, her public standing. The photo of the invitation they never received wasn't a mystery, it was the proof of her misplaced grief. Just as that realization settled into my bones, my phone began to ring again. The screen flashed with a number I didn't have saved but knew instantly, my mother, calling from my father's phone. Her accidental text had been the prelude. Now, the main performance was about to begin. She was calling me, crying, not because she missed me or regretted hurting me, but because her sister had received an invitation and she had not. The curtain was rising on her scene, and for the first time in my life, I felt no obligation to play my part. I let the call go to voicemail. I needed a moment to brace myself, to build my walls brick by brick before facing the hurricane I knew was coming. The voicemail message that followed was exactly what I expected, a torrent of fractured, weeping sentences. Elara, sob, how could you do this to your own mother? I saw it, Patricia's invitation, it's beautiful weeping, and you just cut me out. After everything I've done for you, what will I tell people? Everyone will be there but me, your own mother, it's a public humiliation. You have to fix this, you have to call me back right now. Not a single "I'm sorry." Not a whisper of "I understand why you're hurt." It was a monologue of victimhood, a masterclass in manipulation. I played it for Ben as soon as he got home. He listened, his jaw tightening with every sobbed word. "Public humiliation," he repeated, shaking his head in disgust. "That's her primary concern, not that she's broken her daughter's heart, but that her friends will know she was excluded. This is unbelievable." Then came the text from Maya. It was sharp and furious. "Maya, Mom is a complete wreck because of you. What is wrong with you? You're tearing this family apart over stup. Id party, you need to grow up, apologize to her and send our invitations. You've made your point. Now stop this ridiculous drama." The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. I was the one creating drama. I was the one tearing the family apart. They had set a fire and were now angry that I was refusing to stand in the flames. I knew then that I couldn't hide behind blocked numbers forever. This required a final, definitive conclusion. It needed to be said to their faces, in a calm, controlled environment where they couldn't twist my words or claim I was hysterical. With Ben's hand holding mine, I called my father. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "I will meet with you, Mom and Maya. We will meet one time. Ben will be with me. We can meet at a neutral place, a coffee shop, tomorrow at noon. This will be the only time I discuss this in person. After that, the decision is final." He agreed immediately, relieved to have brokered any kind of meeting. The next day, Ben and I walked into the quiet cafe a few minutes early. I chose a corner booth, a place where we wouldn't be easily overheard. My heart was pounding, but it was a steady, resolute rhythm. I felt like I was preparing to present my final thesis. I had done the research, I had the evidence, and I was sure of my conclusion. My family arrived exactly at noon. My mother's eyes were red and swollen, her face a mask of tragic grievance. Maya looked angry, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. My father just looked tired, a man caught in a crossfire of his own making. They sat down opposite us. For a moment, no one spoke. My mother opened her mouth, ready to launch into another tearful tirade, but I held up a hand. "I will speak first," I said, my voice quiet but firm, using the tone I used at the archives when handling a fragile document. It commanded attention without raising its volume. They were so surprised, they fell silent. I am not here to argue, I began, looking directly at my mother. I am here to present the facts. For my entire life, I have been assigned a role in this family, the difficult, jealous, and overly emotional one. Maya has been assigned the role of the perfect, easy, and lovable one. This narrative has been used to justify decades of unequal treatment. I saw a flicker of protest in my mother's eyes, but I continued before she could speak. Fact, for my 10th birthday, I asked for a horse riding lesson. I was given an expensive dollhouse that I never wanted, which Maya immediately claimed. I was then labeled ungrateful for not appreciating a gift I never asked for, while my actual wish was ignored. Fact, when I received my master's degree with honors, my accomplishment was dismissed as my thing. The very next day, the entire family was mobilized to celebrate a 2-paragraph feature of Maya in a local blog, which was deemed a fantastic launching pad. Fact, you deliberately and secretly threw an engagement party for Maya and invited the entire family except for me. When I discovered this and confronted you, you did not apologize. Instead, you told me I was not invited because you feared my jealousy would cause a scene. You inflicted a deep, profound wound, and then blamed me for the potential of my own bleeding. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. My father was looking down at the table. Maya was staring at me, her anger giving way to a flicker of genuine shock. It was clear she had never heard the family history laid out so clinically. My mother just looked stunned. The decision to not invite you to my wedding, I continued, my voice softening slightly, was not an act of revenge. It was a consequence. It was the logical conclusion to a lifetime of evidence. My wedding day is about celebrating love, partnership, and a new beginning. I cannot and will not have people in that room who have actively and repeatedly demonstrated that they do not respect or value me. I will not perform happy family for your friends and our relatives. I will not pretend that this foundation is not wrought. I turned to Maya. I don't blame you for this, not really. You were raised to believe you were the son. It's not your fault, but you are an adult now. And your message to me yesterday, telling me to grow up and apologize for being hurt, shows that you have learned nothing except your own entitlement. You are not the victim here. Finally, I looked at my mother. The tears were welling in her eyes again, but this time, they looked different. The performative grief was gone, replaced by something that looked unnervingly like real pain. I'm sorry, she whispered, the words barely audible. I never saw it that way. I know, I said, and for the first time I felt a pang of real pity. That's the entire problem. You never saw it at all. Ben, who had been silent beside me, now spoke. Elara's decision stands, he said, his voice calm and resolute. This wedding will be a peaceful and joyous day. For her, we hope that, in the future, a new, healthier relationship can be built. But it has to be built on truth, not on obligation. We stood up, there was nothing more to say. I had presented my case. The archives of our family history were, for the first time, open for all to see. As we turned to leave, I looked back at my mother. She wasn't looking at me with anger or self-pity. She was just looking at me, as if for the first time, and in her eyes, I saw the devastating dawn of a truth she had spent a lifetime avoiding. Our wedding day was bathed in the soft, golden light of late autumn. The sunlight streamed through the massive skylight of the Peabody Library, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, benevolent spirits. The scent of old paper and leather-bound books mingled with the sweet fragrance of the burgundy and cream roses that adorned the aisle. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. Serene, beautiful, and profoundly peaceful. There were no frantic, last-minute dramas. There was no one telling me to suck in my stomach or that my hair would look better a different way. My mother and sister were not there. Their absence was not a gaping hole, as I once might have feared, but a quiet space. It was a space filled not with loss, but with peace, filled with the presence of people who were there for one reason only, to celebrate the love between me and Ben. My Aunt Patricia was there, her eyes shining with pride. She helped me with my dress and held my hand just before I walked down the aisle. Your father should be here, she whispered, squeezing my fingers. But I will walk with you in his place if you'll have me. And so she did, Walking down the aisle on the arm of the woman who had always seen me, always believed me, felt more right than anything I could have imagined. My father had chosen to stand by my mother in solidarity, a decision that saddened me, but no longer had the power to break me. Ben was waiting for me at the altar, his eyes filled with so much love and admiration that it took my breath away. As we said our vows, surrounded by the silent, steadfast witnesses of history on the shelves around us, I felt a sense of rightness settle deep in my soul. We were two people building our own history, starting with this honest, beautiful day. The reception was a joyous, laughter-filled affair. Our friends and chosen family celebrated with us, their happiness genuine and untainted. We danced, we ate, we toasted to a future that felt bright and full of promise. There was no undercurrent of tension, no need for pretense. I felt light, free, and completely, authentically myself. In the weeks and months that followed, things began to shift in subtle ways. My father called me about a month after the wedding. "Your mother, she started seeing a therapist," he said, his voice hesitant. "She talks about you a lot, she's trying to understand." I didn't offer to rush over. I didn't promise to fix anything. I just said, "That's good, Dad, I'm glad to hear that." It was a beginning, perhaps, but I knew that any real change would take time and the work was hers, not mine, to do. Maya sent me a birthday card. Inside, she had written, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, I'm sorry." It wasn't eloquent, but it was a start. It was the first apology I had ever received from her. My relationship with them has not magically healed. There are no cozy family dinners or happy holiday gatherings. The bond that was broken cannot be perfectly fused back together. What we have now is something new, something more cautious and deliberate. It's a relationship built on carefully maintained boundaries, on the understanding that my peace is no longer negotiable. I am civil, I am open to communication, but I am no longer willing to be the family's designated shock absorber. Ben and I are building our life on the foundation we laid on our wedding day, a foundation of truth, respect, and unconditional support. I still work at the archives, finding solace in the quiet honesty of the past, but I no longer live in the shadow of my own family's history. I am the archivist of my own life now, and I am choosing to build a collection filled with joy, love, and a hard-won, beautiful peace. The story of the jealous one has been retired to a dusty shelf, and a new one is being written every day. So, to anyone watching or listening to this, if you've ever been cast in a role you didn't choose by the people who were supposed to love you most, know this: you have the right to walk off their stage. You have the right to write your own script. Your story is yours to tell, and you deserve a life where you are the celebrated hero, not the convenient villain. It might be the hardest thing you ever do, but the peace you find on the other side is worth every single step it takes to get there.